I've been a father for 6 months now, and if nothing else, it's taught me patience. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to tell you about Kettle and Fire bone broth. If you are looking for something to help you with intermittent fasting, with your keto diet, with your paleo diet, if you are looking for a good collagen protein, help you with workout recovery, to help with injury recovery. This stuff is organic, it's grass-fed, it's cooked for 10 hours or more with organic herbs and vegetables, and I can speak from experience when I say it's delicious. Get 10% off your order when you go to kettleandfire.com. Use code BetterHumanhood at checkout. It's good on everything, including the keto package, the fasting package, even just individual boxes. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Better Humanhood, where we build a better world by building better people. We have to live on the planet, and we have to live with other people. We have conversations about making that a wonderful proposition.
Welcome back to Better Humanhood. Hope you are doing awesome. I hope that you are enjoying your summer. It's here. I don't know where you are in the world, but it is hot here in southern Georgia. I'll take this heat over the central New York winter any day. So back to patience. Like I said, I've been a dad for 6 months now. I spend my days home with the baby, and then I work from home in the evening. If nothing else, I've learned to be patient. As a 6-month-old, you probably figure that she doesn't talk a whole lot yet. Can't communicate her needs in a way that I truly understand. You get that. You were a baby once. You probably don't remember being 6 months old. But you might have a child in your life who is once 6 months old or who is right about 6 months old. So let's talk about patience. A lot of studies about patience are about delayed gratification. Maybe the most famous experiment is a marshmallow experiment carried out in the 1960s by a Stanford professor. He sat down with some children. Most of them were 4 or 5 years old, one at a time. They'd sit at a table in a room. He'd walk in, he'd put a marshmallow in front of them, tell them that if the marshmallow was still there when he came back, they could have a second marshmallow as a reward. If they wanted, they could just eat the one marshmallow, and that's all they'd get. After recording how the child responded, whether they ate the marshmallow or waited for a second marshmallow, they found that as they followed these kids throughout their lives, as they grew into adulthood, the kids who waited for the second marshmallow were more successful. They were wealthier, they had fancier titles at work, all that kind of thing. More interested, though, in the causes of patience, how we get more of it. It's interesting to see this study to find out what it means when you're 4 years old and you can wait 15 minutes for a second marshmallow, but I don't think it's necessarily helpful. You might remember our series on happiness. The first part of that series, we went over the chemicals in our brains that are associated with happiness. One of them was serotonin. Christopher Berglund described it this way: serotonin plays so many different roles in our bodies that it's really tough to tag it. For the sake of practical application, he calls it the confidence molecule. Keep this in mind. We're going to do some episodes on confidence next month too. Ultimately, the link between higher serotonin and a lack of rejection sensitivity allows people to put themselves in situations that will bolster self-esteem, increase feelings of worthiness, and create a sense of belonging. It also turns out serotonin regulates patience and impulsivity. This particular study is on rats, but we'll discuss a human study too that's related to it. The usual method for measuring impulse reaction versus patient reactions goes something like this. A rat is presented with 2 levers. One lever releases 1 pellet immediately. The other releases 4 pellets, but after a delay. In other words, the rat is presented with two potential rewards, but if the rat is willing to wait, the reward will be larger. Now, if you administer to one group an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor like Zoloft or Lexapro, you find that the group with the SSRI is more likely to wait for the larger reward. In case it's not entirely clear what an SSRI does, here's a rudimentary description of what happens to a person taking, for example, Zoloft for anxiety. When the brain releases serotonin in a non-anxious person, you get a normal response, such as the confidence that Berglund writes about. The brain of an anxious person, some of that serotonin gets reabsorbed. The action is called reuptake, causing the anxiety or really the lack of confidence. The I in SSRI means inhibitor, blocks, so that SSRI blocks the reuptake. A person who would take an SSRI, if they would be normally serotonin deficient, they get back to a normal amount. Presumably, rats in both the control group and the group getting the SSRI come in with roughly equivalent baseline serotonin response. That is, they all have normal confidence response to a serotonin release. Some serotonin is going to be lost to reuptake, and both groups of rats would have the same amount of reuptake occurring if it weren't for the SSRI. When you administer the SSRI, less serotonin than normal would be reabsorbed, so those rats would have more serotonin in their system. Turns out significantly more rats in the group getting the SSRI are willing to wait for the 4 pellets than those not receiving the drug. In other words, the rats with more serotonin running around in their brains are more patient. We see a similar thing in mice. When serotonin production is stimulated, mice are willing to wait longer for a bigger reward, as long as they actually believe the reward will be forthcoming. It means you can't hold on to the reward for too long. You can't put it on too long a delay, or else they won't believe the reward is coming. They'll just go after the quick one. You probably can't get a review board to approve a double-blind study like this with human. That is, where one person wouldn't know whether they were being administered a drug, but we do have technology in functional MRI, fMRI, that allows us to see things like serotonin release in the brain. So here's the related human study I mentioned. This time, a bunch of people were offered either $100 tomorrow or $120 at the end of the month. So either way, there's a delay. They're not getting it today. But if you're willing to wait a month instead of a day, you get an extra 20%. Some people didn't want to wait for the extra cash, and if I explain the rat experiment well, you'd probably guess that the fMRI showed that the people who elected to wait showed that more serotonin was present. The good news is patience is trainable, or at least we can untrain impatience, according to Dean Griffiths. Griffiths writes that there are 2 parts of the brain. The anterior cingulate cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex that take prominent roles in patience. Both are part of the default mode network, which is still a new enough concept in neuroscience that it's not super well defined. Basically, if you're focusing on something, the default mode network is pretty quiet. But if you're not, well, watch out. It's that bundle of brain parts that spins and whirs and generally won't shut up when you've got nothing else to do. If you live with depression or anxiety, chances are you have a very active default mode network. Meditation appears to do a pretty good job shutting it down. You might remember that we talked about that. And happiness as well. I talked about it in the 3rd part as a training method for bringing about joy and training confidence, creativity, and more. Chade-Meng Tan writes in Joy on Demand, one of the biggest surprise discovery of his life is that self-confidence can be trained by putting his butt on a meditation cushion. More serotonin makes us happier. More serotonin makes us more patient. Patience yields success. Success presumably makes us happy. Meditation makes us happier and more patient. I'm not saying maybe we should meditate more, but if you're wondering, I use the Oak Meditation app, and right now that's available for iPhone only. I don't know if they're working on an Android app. I would assume that they are, but who knows? There are plenty of reasons to be patient pushing off gratification. Consider the subprime mortgage crisis in the U.S. in the first decade of the 2000s. Led to the crash in 2008. Many people who could have qualified for normal mortgages instead opted for what are called 228 mortgages, that is, loans with far lower than prime interest rates for the first 2 years, then cranked up high for the rest of the term of the loan. People figured, oh, well, we'll just refinance before the end of those first 2 years. Most of them didn't, and they wound up upside down in their homes. Some people chalk this up to poor impulse control, the same thing that keeps us going back for seconds at the dessert table. If all that seems just a little too personal, maybe, just maybe, you need a little perspective. Thanks for listening. I hope you find this kind of thing interesting. I know I do. That's why I'm learning more about it. That's why I'm sharing as I go. kettleandfire.com. Use code BetterHuman at checkout for 10% off your order. It's not just one order. You can keep going back to try new stuff if you want. They'll also deliver a subscription package. You get 20% off those subscriptions. And I believe my code should work on top of that 20% if you subscribe. So go check them out. BetterHumanhood.com for show notes for this and other episodes. JoshShear.com if you want kind of longer form writing on the same topic. Usually that comes out the day before this episode would air. Be who you are. Be who you will to be. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Get show notes and more at betterhumanhood.com. Leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And have yourself a wonderful day.